Rev up your engines. It's a 2013 Tundra. The guy bought it for only 13 grand at an auction. Normally, I am not an auction fan, but on the other hand, he's had it for 2 years and nothing's gone wrong yet. So what's the story here? I mean, look, it is a beautiful truck. It's got the Toyota Indestructible V8. It's a 4x4. It's not smashed up. How did he get it so cheap? Well, he got it at an auction. It was a salvage title because they said water got this high. Now he got information. Turns out it was a tidal event on the East Coast. So the water got up that high, but the vehicle was never started. So all the computers weren't energized. And let's face the facts. This is a very tall Tundra. As the owner just told me, he would have never bought a Mercedes if it had been flooded out with all the electronics and things that can go wrong, even if they aren't flooded. But it's a Toyota, and they are pretty well sealed. Now, he's owned it for 2 whole years, and he hasn't had to do anything to it yet, really. And of course, $13,000 for a beautiful truck like this that had less than 100,000 miles. That is a steal in this coronavirus period. That's an absolute steal. I do always have to warn people. Okay, the water got this high. That means there was water everywhere. There's electronics everywhere. It certainly didn't soak for long. Look at the seats. They're still in immaculate shape. Extended cab. The back. It's clean. And guess what? This is 2 years later. It doesn't stink of mold or anything. The engine's got the normal corrosion on aluminum. You see that. The brake system isn't particularly corroded. The firewall's clean. And when we start it up, listen to that engine. It runs like a clock. It's not missing. It's not acting funny. What a deal he got. Now, on the one hand, he did get a little lucky. He should have gone to Vegas right after and gambled on. Could have made $1 million there. It is a Toyota. Just realize any car that's been flooded that deep, all kinds of bad things can happen. I've had many customers buy other cars, not Toyotas, that were flooded, and they were just disaster areas. The computer system went gaga. Everything went nuts up. Realize Toyota seals their systems pretty well, especially in these big trucks. They expect people to go through water and stuff. So a lot of the stuff is somewhat waterproof compared to other cars. But you never know electronically. So we'll hook up the computer and we'll see what the truth is. Simple hook up on a Toyota, it's right there. Now this is the Tundra with the V8. So here we go. Automatic scan, we'll go through everything. Look how fast it is because it's a late model vehicle. As you can see right here, it's going through 23 subsystems. We're waiting, we'll see. You know, these things aren't gas misers. This thing's averaging 16.9 miles a gallon. That's what these things do. And it's now got 100,202 miles on it. Oh, the engine, transmission, that's all perfectly fine. But the four-wheel drive system says it's got a failure. Let's see what's wrong with it. Lost communication with the computer, and the data received from the control module are not valid. So what we're going to do, we don't know what happened since this was flooded. We're going to clear all these trouble codes and see what happens after a drive. Realize, as I've said many times, a fancy scan tool like mine, this thing can do a lot. You get a regular scan tool, hook it up, erase codes. You want to erase those codes. Those are in-depth codes. You need a fancier machine to do that. Somebody may have just never erased them. And the other code is for airbag. Let's see what that says. It says malfunction of occupant classification system, opening the side squib of the left-hand circuit. That's the driver's circuit. Often the airbag systems will go wonkers if they flood out. Again, we don't know if somebody fixed it and didn't clear it. We don't know. So we'll clear the trouble codes and we'll see what happens. Now we're going to look at live data. We'll start it up. Watch the live data, and we're off. This is relatively new Toyota, so check it out, baby. 330 points of data to look at. Short-term fuel on number 1. It's adding fuel. Long-term fuel on 1, it's adding a little more fuel, 7.8, and the short-term fuel term on bank 2 is 1.5, 2.3. It's a little bit off, but the long-term fuel, it's actually adding a reasonable amount of fuel, 7.8%. The long-term fuel trim on bank 2 is 5.4, well, 7.8. So, bank 1 is running leaner than bank 2. Doesn't particularly shake, runs okay, but it's running lean. It's adding fuel from being flooded. Who knows what that's done to any computer systems, but it does have 100,000 miles. I'd advise putting fuel injection cleaner in the tank, the ATS stuff my friend Bernie in Albuquerque sells. See what happens. Could easily help it out. Better to have it running lean like that, because it's bad enough it's getting 16.8 miles per gallon. There's more air, less fuel. You make it run better, less lean, you probably get even worse gas mileage. He's not complaining about the acceleration. He had no problem driving it here. He loves the vehicle. So that's probably something you'd live with. Let's shut the hood and take it for a spin. It's got a backup camera so I won't hit the neighbor's mailbox. And yeah, it's a Tundra. It's a big truck. 4-wheel drive. High up in the air. Shifts like a dream. But hey, it handles pretty good for a big truck. We'll get on a little country road here. See how this thing goes on a little drag strip. Coming around the bend, handles fine in the twisties. It doesn't ride like the old ones. We'll come to a stop, nobody's behind us, and we'll floor it. And, hey, it gets up and goes. Shifts good, listen to that engine. Considering that this thing was flooded by saltwater tide, about up to my stomach, I'm sort of amazed that it doesn't have anything wrong with it. Now, he bought this thing 2 years ago, so there's plenty of time if it had warped the circuit boards in a computer for it to make it act up, but it hasn't on him. He did get somewhat lucky with this. But then again, it's a Toyota. Listen to that engine. It's a 4-wheel drive, top of the line. Leather seats, I mean, what a deal for 13 grand. He did take a chance, but in his case, his chance paid off. You come to a stop. And what does it do? It just sits there. It doesn't shake. It doesn't go bananas. Yeah, it's running slightly lean. You're probably better off just leaving this thing alone. Because, like I say, if you do fix it and make it not run lean anymore, it'll probably get worse gas mileage. And it's only getting 16 now. Well, the man didn't listen to my advice and bought a salvage truck. But, on the other hand, do you feel lucky, punk? Well, he was definitely lucky. For 13 grand, he got this beautiful truck. Now, on the other hand, really high up in the air, and it was made in Texas and San Antonio. So in his case, he got a little bit lucky, but got a beautiful truck for 13 grand. I see these things going for $30,000, $35,000. But really, stick to big, tall Toyotas in that case. At least, you got a lot better chance of getting one that isn't going to fall apart. He's owned this thing for 2 years now, and it's still going strong. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Well, GM quality is staying low, maybe even getting lower. Now they're recalling some 2022 Cadillacs and GMC Acadia vehicles because they might not have tightened the rear suspension link on the back. And you can lose control if it falls off and you lose the steering and the wheel starts flopping around. Their quality control is just, ugh. If you remember, during the height of the pandemic, they were just taking some of their white-collar workers and making them work on the assembly line. I predicted they're going to have quality control problems from this crap, and obviously they are. They can't even tighten bolts on vehicles anymore. That shows such a lack of quality. And this is what happens when you pay your workers less and less and less. I mean, it's bad enough that they're sending a lot of their production south of the border to Mexico, where some of these GM workers are getting paid $6.85. Not an hour. That would be bad enough. But for an entire 12-hour workday, what do they think is going to happen? They're not going to have quality control problems? A moron could figure that one out. You keep paying cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Guess what? The quality's going to go down, and that's obviously what's happening with this company. They talk about, oh, we're going to electrify the future, the future. They can't even build the stuff they're building now correctly. Imagine what it's going to be like if they start making electric vehicles and the electrical stuff start going bananas. They'd have to convince people to buy them in the first place, and I don't think GM's going to be very good at convincing them that. They got a bad history of bad electric cars, batteries starting on fire. Their original electric car, they couldn't even sell them, so they had to just lease them out, and then they crushed them all after so many years. If I were you, I wouldn't put any money in my stock portfolio at General Motors anytime soon. Because the winds of change may be coming, but they don't seem to be coming to GM. They seem to be doing the same old garbage that they've been doing for decades. Our friend 36 says, I got a torn CV axle boot. I changed my oil and I saw the boot was ripped and grease was coming up. For a while, I've been getting a vibration when I accelerate from 45 to 50. For somebody like me who does their oil changes, could I change that drive shaft on it? Sure, why not? You don't go to the dealer and buy a new one because they're outrageous. Some of the dealer axle shafts are like $700-800. You can get aftermarket ones that work perfectly fine at discount auto parts store. I've been buying from AutoZones at Riley's for years, and they all work perfectly fine. And you can get them sometimes as cheap as $60, $70, $80. It's just on bolts and bolts on. The only thing I'd advise you to do, buy a tie rod removal tool, because you got to untake the bolt for the tie rod, then you got to get it off. You don't want to do it by hammering because you can damage it, but the tools go in there, and as you tighten the tool, it pops them loose, and then you can easily just replace it, put another one on, and bolt everything back together again. It's not all that hard to do. The hardest part is to get the big axle nut off. And there, just have a long cheater bar, and you can generally stand on it and get it off. And if that doesn't work, you have a long cheater bar. Get like 5-foot piece of pipe, one that slides over your cheater bar, and then when you get enough leverage, you can easily snap it off. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.